In Harry Olmer's name.
In Harry Olmer's name.
In Harry Olmer's name.
In Harry Olmer's name. In Harry Olmer's name.
We pledge to celebrate life.
We pledge to celebrate life.
We pledge to celebrate life.
We pledge to celebrate
We pledge
life.
to celebrate life.
We pledge to celebrate life. To recognize our differences.
And unite in our humanity.
To recognize our differences.
And to always shine a light where darkness grows. And to always shine light where darkness grows.
And to always shine light where darkness grows.
To challenge intolerance and champion community. To always shine a light where darkness grows.
And unite in our humanity. For those whose voice has been denied.
We promise to be a voice for those whose voices have been denied.
We promise to be a voice for those whose voice has been denied.
To challenge intolerance and champion community. And to always shine a light where darkness grows.
Those whose voice has been denied. And champion community. Promise to be a voice. Recognize our differences.
For those whose voice has been denied. To challenge intolerance.
And champion community.
We promise to be a voice. For those whose voice has been denied. We do this by raising money for War Child. To challenge intolerance. And donating winter care packages.
To recognise our differences. To be a voice. Those whose voice has been denied. And champion community. Promise to be a voice. Do this by raising money for War Child.
For those whose voice has been denied. To
Challenge intolerance and champion community.
And donating winter care packages.
To always shine a light where darkness grows.
And unite in our humanity.
Pledge to celebrate life.
For those whose voice has been denied.
We promise to be a voice for those whose voices have been denied.
To always shine a light where darkness grows.
For those whose voice has been denied.
In Harry Olmer's name.
In Harry Olmer's name.
In Harry Olmer's name.
In Harry
Olmer's name.
Hello. We're so happy for you to join us tonight.
Hi. Hi, Harry. Hello. Hello.
So that is all of these amazing young people who have been working with your testimony since September last year.
Yeah.
And they are really honoured and very, very privileged to have the opportunity to talk to you tonight. And I wondered, Harry, if you wanted to hear a little bit about who we are and what we've been doing. So we'll hand over to Neve.
Hi, I'm Neve, and we're a group of young people called the Sprungsters, and we join together on most Thursday nights, and we explore loads of different subject areas through physical theatre, and we work together and put all our thoughts and feelings and everything into performances that we love sharing with everybody else through movement and working together, which obviously we can't do now, but
Wanted to just tell you a tiny bit about how much your testimony has inspired us and how the young people have decided to take action having been inspired by your testimony. So we're just going to hear from Lily, who's going to talk to us at first.
I think it was when you were talking about the fact that you had to wear sacks, people had to wear sacks and like were freezing when they were working. It really like made us think about the fact that people really struggle with clothing in the winter time, and that people were suffering so much. And that really made us think about like the kind of charity work we want to do because of your testimony, and how we want to help people as much as we can. So we chose a charity called War Child to be a part of our pledge and to be our charity. They support young people who have gone through trauma and suffered because of war. So your testimony really helped us decide that.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult actually to start talking about the trauma, because the trauma's gradually built up. It got more severe and more severe until 1942, when the Holocaust really started. Then it actually hit you, because we didn't know what's going to happen. We were lied, of course, by the Germans as well. They told them to take us on a small amount of a small suitcase to take it with us, because we were going on resettlement. And of course, once we got into a place where we were herded into an open field, and when the train arrived, so they separated all the women from the men, and the children, of course, as well. They didn't have a chance even to take the suitcases with them, so they more or less left them on where they were, because they were rushed into the trains and to be herded. And of course, the same happened to my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, and so it really was. That was a terrible situation. And not only, but we were deposited on a field on about 18-20 miles from Krakow, and we got there. We were the first group to arrive there, and we could see this field was being. Some people were digging a trench right around that field, and we really thought that our end is going to come there. But of course, gradually more and more people kept arriving on that field, and those trenches were used as latrines, on one side for men and the other side for women. So you can imagine it was really, the weather was very, very kind, but unfortunately the field that we were deposited on was damp, and whatever food we managed to bring with us went molded straight very, very, very quickly, so we couldn't use it. And we were on the field for 4 days, and it was absolutely horrendous. And so gradually, of course, you could see what's happening to our trauma, and we got used to it, unfortunately. We get used to situations that they arise, and we've got no choice. So, but that's what happened, actually. That was the first encounter I had with the Germans. Although as we were driving, we could hear when from our town, when the selection took place, we only took men away. And as we were driving past the wood, we could hear an awful lot of shooting going on there. And a woman actually started screaming, shouting, and getting hysterical. And but they stopped the wagon, pulled that woman down and shot her. So be quiet, never put it down. And that's how it gradually actually built up. And whatever happened afterwards, we had no choice to accept it, but to accept it. So that's how it was, because the build up for the trauma was actually very, 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 very sudden. And from then onwards, of course, everything actually we just have to accept it. If you didn't accept it, you wouldn't survive the war. That's what happened to me as well.
I think the one thing that all of the young people really got from hearing your testimony was was how young you were as well, and all of the trauma that you've just spoken about, the fact that you had to endure that at such a young age, and being younger than some of these young people here are back then. And so they've been inspired to raise money for a charity called War Child to try and support other children and young people who find themselves caught in conflict. Fern, would you be able to tell Harry what you guys have been inspired to do as well as raise money?
We made 40 care packages to send to the Destitution Fund at the Coventry Refugee and Migrant Centre, and specifically the destitute males at the centre. And so we set these packages up, everybody made one, and they had food and toiletries and lots of warm clothing to keep them warm and to provide them with things that they didn't have. And the part of your testimony when people had to wear like the clothing sacks, like Lily said, in the factories, that we felt inspired by that because we could provide something for people who needed it.
Well, actually, see how young I was. I was actually younger than my real age was, because my father, when the Germans issued new identity cards, he told out the children, he said, don't tell the Germans your real date of birth, tell them that you're 2 years older than actually you are. So I automatically became not in 1927 born, but 1925, so I was 2 years older. And so you can imagine that instead of being a 13, 14-year-old boy, I was all of a sudden became 16-year-old as far as the Germans concerned, because I wouldn't have been issued with a ration card, because if you couldn't work, you couldn't get a ration card either. So that was my father's thought actually of telling us to register as the older than what we are. But again, it's difficult to start talking about it, because you start living in a place together with all the other people, and they're in a similar situation. The food was indescribable. But as far as the food is concerned, there were no night shifts then, because we were working in the open air. They're working in building a railway junction, an embankment to a railway. And so the food was, they had no food actually for the 12 hours when we were working during the day. The only food we got that we got back when we got back home or to the camp, we got some cabbage soup, and we got a lump of bread which had to last you for 24 hours. But everybody's in the same situation as well. And it's not so much the food, although the food was very, very, but everybody's the same. But this living accommodation, the sleeping accommodation, they were absolutely horrendous, absolutely horrendous. We didn't have individual bunks, we were sleeping on platforms, 3 platforms on top of each other. And of course, we were infected by lice, bed bugs. It was absolutely, absolutely terrible, really terrible. You just can't describe it, what kind of life actually it was. One night, I think I told it in the testament as well, I just couldn't bear it any longer. I got up in the middle of the night and went over to the shower rooms, and of course I switched on the lights, and the Germans realized someone was in the shower rooms in the middle of the night. and the Germans always walked with two Alsatian dogs, and they burst into the shower room, and I really thought they were going to let the dog loose on me, but the German was just taken aback and held the dogs back. And of course, the Jewish policemen were walking behind the Germans, and he turns around to them and he told them that this is das ist Sauberkeit, that is cleanliness. But when I realized later on that getting rid of the lice in the bed back from your body actually doesn't help you at all, because the vermin had much easier access to your body. So that was really dreadful. Anyway, but it's another thing, of course. It's what, another day, another hour for your life. But I was lucky. I was lying next to an older man, not much older, maybe 10 years older than myself, but he was a member of the Krakow Opera House, and he was in his while he was trying to fall asleep, he was singing some arias from various operas, and so that actually put me to sleep as well. But it was to me it was a novelty, of course, listening to the various arias from operas.
Next up, Harry, we have the lovely Jade to tell you how else we've been inspired as well.
Yeah, so after watching your testimony, and we also got told by Mark and Sarah a little bit about your life after that, as a group, we really felt inspired by moments of darkness as part of our pledge was to celebrate our lives and the things that we can do and the things that we're given as a part of it.
Well, we had nothing to celebrate whatsoever.
I think the young people were really struck with your comment, Harry, when you spoke about going to Windermere and going from hell to heaven.
You can't compare to what it was like after in Windermere. Life was back to living, but for me to get to Windermere, I was terribly ill right at the end of the war, very ill. I couldn't. If the war would have lasted an extra day, I'm sure I wouldn't be alive. I managed to, when the Russian tanks broke through the gates onto the camp, I managed to drag myself out down from my bank, together with everybody else who was running out to the Russians. And but I soon turned back because I had to go back onto my bank bed. And from then onwards, I didn't remember anything that happened to me. I couldn't talk. I didn't know anything at all. I became practically unconscious. I probably was unconscious at the time as well. And of course, my luck was that we were lying there in the makeshift hospital as well, and I couldn't talk. And they must have been feeding me somehow. It wouldn't have been survival, of course. A week or 2 weeks before me, and I was on a train, and we were driving past a big railway junction, and lots of trains actually were parked one to another, and we somehow somebody found out that the train parked parallel with ours had some food provisions So everybody got off the train, got into the train next to it, and I managed to get onto a wagon. It was full of oats. So I tied my trousers and I put the oats down into my trousers. And when we arrived in today's Resin, I found my friend with whom I was working, actually filling those bombs with explosives. He was sitting on the ground there, and he was starving, and because I was starving as well. But fortunately, I had those oats with me. So we made a fire, and we roasted the oats because we had a tin plate. And so that's what we did. We roasted some oats, and I was sent afterwards, and then we separated as well. So a few weeks later, he came looking for me because he knew I was there at the same place, and he found me, and he sat down next to my bed, and I still couldn't talk by then, but the nurse came over to him, and she asked him what was my name, and he gave her my name, and she bent over me, and she asked me whether I've got a sister called Sarah. And when I shook my head, then she said, I'm sure she's alive, because she was in a camp in Austria together with my sister. And the nurse was sent over to the Reisestadt. And my sister was still there at other camp. But at least I had a name by then. But when we arrived in England, obviously they didn't know that what my name was, because although they assured me in Prague, don't worry, you're going on somebody else's name, but we sent notices as well to the people in England. They should know to accept you. But when you arrived first when they thought there was a stowaway, but anyway, soon we sorted it out later on then. So that's how it came to Windermere. But life in Windermere, of course, was absolutely it's beautiful place, a magnificent, beautiful place. And food, of course, was when you see the film from how the children actually pounced on the bread, taking bread into their pockets as well afterwards, because never thought that you see bread on the tables again like that. But we managed to become accustomed to normal lives as well. So it was completely different. Yes.
What do you want people to take away from listening to your testimony or taking part in Echo Eternal?
I don't know what I hope you take away from this from myself as well. That don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. But in addition to hope, actually, you've got to remember as well that the worst thing you can possibly do is hate. If you hate people, you really don't know what it will lead to. Hate is the most like the virus now here as well. The virus here, it's eating into your soul, eating your life as well, and that's what hate is. So don't ever hate again. Don't do it. So if you ever hate it, I hope you never do. But that's the most important thing. That's what I say. Hope you take it away from this meeting today. And so don't remember, hate is the most dreadful virus actually. It's into you, and it spreads, and it gets worse and worse.
I don't think I could agree with you any more, Harry, and that's something that everyone has spoken about, and about the idea of eliminating hate is so important. We've got I think one more question for you, and that is Abby. Abby, you have a question.
Hi. My question is, how does it feel to gift your testimony to projects like ours?
it's difficult to tell how, but you accept it, and it didn't do any heroics actually in order to survive it. Absolutely nothing, nothing at all. It just maybe a bit too meek, but we knew there's no choice at all at the time. No choice but to more or less submit to whatever actually comes to you. And the number of people actually who, thinking actually, one particular incident we had before we went to work in the camps, we had to get out on what we call the Appellplatz, a big square, and we all being lined up. And the Germans were walking up and down, looking at us one another, and I'll come over there, come back again, and come back again. Others came along to look at us as well, and taking people out of the line and sending them off. And we knew exactly where they were going. Some they went meekly actually over there because they knew they were going to be shot. But there's one man actually standing next to me. He was an older man, not older, but he must be about 20, 25 maybe. He's tall. He spoke beautiful German, and he was taken up to the line, and he knew what's going to happen to him as well. And he just begged the Germans, "Look, I'm young, I'm old, I'm strong." And the Germans took his gun out and shot him there and then. But why I was left standing there, it just fate as well. But why? It's just, I don't know what was preordained or it was just luck. It must be just luck, nothing else. Nothing else. So there's nothing you can do about those things. Especially if you're, that's what life is, and fate as well. But that man actually who went to his death, not with equanimity, but just begging for his life.
Thank you so much, Harry. Not only has it been an absolute privilege to have the experience to work with your testimony, and I know that every single young person that we've worked with on your testimony has been really moved to think about the change they can make in their own life because of the absolute resilience and kindness that you have shown throughout your experience and in your later life as well. And thank you for being so generous to come and share your experience again with us today. We are truly, truly thankful. And I know the impact that it has on these young lives. And I hope that it gives you some peace to know that these young people will carry your testimony in their hearts for the rest of their lives. And I really believe that you sharing your experience has changed them for good.
Just as one thing actually is, well, I don't hate anybody because I've learned actually what hate is. My revenge for the Germans, what I survived. I survived and built up my own family here as well. A very active and productive family I've got. But that's my revenge actually on the Germans was. They wanted to destroy everybody, but fortunately they did not manage to do it. And thank you. I'm really privileged to have met such a wonderful group of people like yourselves.
And thank you so much, Harry. We've pledged, Harry, to celebrate life and to fill our hearts with love and to fight hate. and that's because of you. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
And can everyone just say goodbye? And then thank you for your time, Harry. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I was born in 1927 in Sosnowiec, a town in Poland, which is in southwest Poland, very near the German border.
I think one of the things that have inspired the vast majority of us at Sprung Advance is the fact that Harry Olmer was really young when all of this happened to him. The vast majority of us are between 12 and 19 years old, and I think it's fair to say none of us can relate to at all how he feels and felt during that time. And I think it's really inspired us to really recognise our privilege and our situation, and to really not take what we have for granted, and to use our situation and our privilege to boost the voices of others. And at this point, it is Harry Olmer's voice. We want to spread the word, and like he wanted to get rid of hate.
And I was sent to Factory C, and we arrived there when it was already dark, and the lights were on, and we looked through the gates, and we could see that everything was yellow there.
Upon hearing Harry's testimony, we knew we wanted to do whatever we could to help those in need.
The air was yellow. The people walking around, they were yellow. It was absolutely indescribable.
We made 40 care packages to send to the Coventry Refugee and Migrant Centre for their destitution fund.
But all the people they had in a dreadful state. They were walking around actually dressed in the paper sacks that the chemicals used to arrive in.
Each package included toiletries, food, and warm clothes.
Every time he survived, he felt that it was luck.
No, it was very, very lucky. Very, very lucky. Very lucky.
And you think about how bad the situation was, and you think, like, how on earth could you feel such a sense of luck when you're in such a terrible situation? But it kind of gives us, like, it reminds us to have hope that no matter how hard things get, there's a chance that it might get better no matter what.
Eventually we arrived not very far from Czechoslovakia, and all of a sudden somebody found out that the train parked parallel with ours had some provisions on it. So everybody scrambled off from our train, got into the other train, and I got into a wagon full of oats. I tied my trousers and I stuffed the oats down into my trousers, and then went back onto the train. And eventually the train moved off. And
Harry spoke about often the importance to not hate and not let hate consume us, because hate can lead to awful things happening.
The things that happened in the past was in the past, and what I created afterwards is the future, and that's how you got to look at it. You can't look back on it all the time. You've got to remember it, no question about it. You mustn't forget it. But you can't live actually in the past all the time.
Nowadays, people take 24 hours for granted, but for him, it must have felt like a lifetime. This kind of links with that we should more take in the now than actually worrying about the future, and kind of links with the celebrate life.
It's amazing how human beings, how strong they are. We really are very, very strong people inside, and we can overcome so many different tribulations. And it's amazing what human beings actually can get through. They really can.
The sunrise is like a new beginning. It's a fresh start to a brand new day. I love how no two sunrises are the same. They all fill the sky in different ways, but each one has its own uniqueness and beauty. It reminds me to look out for that little bit of beauty in every situation. Sometimes that beauty is more obvious than others, but it is always there. The sunrise gives me hope. especially in times of uncertainty. Because it rises no matter what. Even if there has been a massive change in my life, something good or bad has happened, or I'm unsure of what's going to happen in the future, I can still always count on the sun rising and setting as the constant in my life. The thing I know will always happen. There will always be a sunrise, so there will always be a fresh start. There will always be a sunrise, so there will always be beauty. There will always be a sunrise, so there will always be hope. There will always be a sunrise, so there will always be hope.